Hey guys, thanks for joining us for episode number 6. We are joined, special guest, very successful CPA and principal at one of the top firms in the country, Emily Lambert. She played volleyball at UCF, my alma mater, and super excited to get into her story. So, Emily,
good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You look sharp.
I brought my power pants today.
Yeah, and something I just learned offline, and by the way, we were having like good conversations. I'm like, okay, stop talking. We need to press the record button because this is part of your story. But just the start of it, right? Like, jump right in. You're in the tax business, very successful in the tax business, and I just learned from you that kind of where you started is where you still kind of are. You were an intern, and then you go all the way from intern to principal. So before we get there and kind of what we can learn from that, volleyball.
Yes.
Take us into your career. How'd you get to UCF? What position did you play? You just mentioned that you're in the Ring of Honor now. So you have a banner?
I have a banner in the gym. My kids think I'm pretty cool.
Gosh, you are
At least right now.
Yes.
Yeah, stay tuned. That'll probably change.
Sure. How old are your kids?
11 and 8. 2 girls.
Okay. So they're coming into the teenage years where they won't think you're cool.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's
so
what I've been
hanging
told.
on to that as long as possible. So I'm originally from the Midwest. Got a handwritten letter from the coach. Never heard of UCF, but thought this is really cool. Wanted to just go spread my wings, do something completely different. Loved the state of Kansas, loved my hometown, but got the opportunity, and I was recruited as a setter. Never actually played the position. We had an All-American there at UCF when I came, and so I played right side my freshman year and then left side, or the 0-1, my sophomore year. We had a great my first 2 seasons. We won the Atlantic Sun. We went to the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
We won our first round game my sophomore year against Cincinnati, which was the first time UCF had made it to the second round. Had to face a tough Florida team, but it was a great experience. And those first 2 years were kind of my largely years of playing. I kind of had a back injury that made the last 2 years a little bit shorter than I would have hoped for.
What was the injury?
The injury was a back injury. Just kind of a disc that was out of place, like L4, L5, and it was just causing a lot of pain. And just every time you go up and swing, you kind of feel it down your back. So
I feel
it was
right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, well, do you want to have children and live a normal life, or do you want to keep swinging a volleyball? And I think with volleyball versus maybe other sports that are out there, there's not really a road past college anyway. Yes, you can play professionally overseas, but it's not like the WNBA or the women's MLS soccer league. I knew that it was going to come to an end, and if I needed to end that sooner rather than later, then let's focus on kind of where I would go from there. I started out as a biology major, which is kind of funny because I had a knee injury in high school that required physical therapy. So my physical therapist was great. I thought this is what I want to do. Turns out I'm terrible at biology and barely made it through my freshman year. Switched majors, found accounting and finance, and that was kind of my path. And ironically enough, where I landed to kind of start my career, where you alluded to, was it was much easier to go get an accounting job than a finance job. Finance was this nebulous, like you could go sell insurance or you could go do this, but accounting was like, hey, we have this career fair and all these people need interns, all these firms need interns. And I was in a unique situation because I still had my scholarship where I needed a part-time internship. And the firm I started with allowed me to work 20 hours a week, keep my scholarship, and I've been there ever since. So that was spring of 2006.
Wow. So that's interesting. So I talked to a lot of people about this. So you kind of knew that the point about volleyball not having a professional life after it, really, I mean, I know there is, you alluded to it, you can play, but you went into it knowing, hey, this isn't going to be it for me. I have the framework where alongside of this experience, I want to also find out what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life.
Correct. That's exactly right. So once I figured out accounting and finance was kind of it, I did the internship. I loved it, loved the people. Crazy enough, I loved the work too.
Yeah.
And, went back to school, got my undergrad, and then did my master's in tax right there alongside it. And the firm I worked with was really awesome about allowing me the flexibility to finish the degree and work part-time. And I started full-time once I finished that master's. So I've been with them the entire time. We merged with a larger firm. We're a top 8 firm now, Clifton Larson Allen is. And so I went into my accounting career thinking like, I love the small firm. This is kind of it. You kind of get to do a little bit of everything, which really got my career off to a great start. But when we merged in, it gave me this industry specialization that has kind of created this new opportunity for me in my career, and it's afforded me a lot of things that I didn't know really existed. So I guess that's kind of the start of how I got into. So
you were one of the lucky ones that kind of found what they like to do, found a good firm to work with, and you just put your head down, worked hard, and now have become a principal at Clifton Larson Allen, which congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I saw that was announced a few years ago. And a part of this, like, I know a little bit of your story just because, shout out to Blake Hostetter, my father-in-law, very, very successful, CPA. And I know you guys kind of had a really cool mentor-mentee relationship. And at a young age, that was probably special for you to kind of be able to learn, because now you're doing a lot. The industry specification you referenced is medical
physician practices, independent, kind of runs the full gamut. So your normal traditional practices all the way up to ones that are now owned by private equity. And that industry itself has changed a lot over the last 5 years. As Blake was kind of ending his career and retiring, we saw a lot of practices selling off. So again, you got to kind of go with the market and go with what's happening. You constantly are learning new things. And, you know, I just have appreciated everything that he's done for me. You know, we still see each other regularly, and it's just, he's been a great friend and mentor and just support system as I've grown in my career.
I feel like that's huge too at a young age. And I feel like the mentor-mentee thing's interesting because I'm always like aware of it now way more than I was at a young age, where for me, when I was getting out of school, it was like, who wants to mentor me? Like, who wants to spend time with me and talk, you know? But I've found that, you know, people that are successful, if they kind of see you and go, hey, that person's got a lot of initiative, a lot of skills, I see a lot in them, they really enjoy pouring back into you and giving you a chance to kind of learn from them, and they want to see you be successful.
They want to see you be successful, and it's so important, you know, in Blake's case for his succession. So I took over a lot of his clients. That gives me the opportunity to grow and develop and define what I want my career to be. And then I've got folks that I am bringing along behind me for that same reason. You know, I actually, another new role for me effective this year was I took over the physician and dental practice for the firm as well. So I kind of run, it's about a $70 million, or we hope it will be this year, between physician and dentist, a $70 million practice. So that's getting me out of my comfort zone again of, how do I look at growth differently? How do I look at my capacity differently? You know, the timing, all the things that you talk about in athletics that are so important to your success, it's becoming even more important these last, 32, 33 days as I'm doing another new role. So I think the experiences that you have in college and in sports really helps you in your professional career, understanding what it takes to lead a team, run a team. You can't coach everybody the same way, right? Like, everybody's going to look at or respond to criticism differently. So I think those are all things that I've taken kind of throughout my professional career that was built on my athletic and sports career.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about that the other day, about you can't coach people the same way. And that's something where I resisted that a little bit. And I know my early days and getting into what I was doing, I was just expecting everyone to be like me or to communicate the way I did. And, if you didn't, then it's frustrating, whatever. We have conflict and whatever. And then it's just a realization that people come from different places. They have different personality traits. Their intent may be good, and so that's been a shift. Do you have a style of leadership? I know athletics, that I saw that in basketball, right? Like, star player was not treated the same as the walk-on. That's just the way it was.
That's just the way it was. Yep.
They had a longer leash. They got more attention. They got way more towards their success, and they got people walking into them with their class. They got more
opportunity to fail.
To fail. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting because I also have to kind of level set my own expectations of the individual, because they may have different goals or expectations of what they want out of their career than maybe I think that they're capable of. So it's figuring out how to manage that and get them to kind of get uncomfortable a little bit. But you can't yell at someone and expect them to just be like, oh, I'm going to go work harder. I'm going to go figure out this tax return. It just doesn't work like that. So you have to say, okay, I'm going to give you, we're going to have a tough conversation.
Sure.
I'm not mad, but I think you're capable of doing this, and let's talk about how we're going to get you there. Yep. So to me, I think that all just kind of translates back into.
Do you look for that coachability when you hire too? I mean, from athletics, I think for us too, it's like the number one factor. Like if you're coachable, it's like we can deal with just about anything.
Oh, you can teach. You can teach how to do the tax return, but it's that willingness and that discipline and that desire to be coachable and to want to learn new things. And I don't know. I kind of remember coming out of school and thinking, okay, like I've got my degrees. This is all I'm going to need to do, you know, and you're constantly learning every single day. And I think, you know, my younger self, I would have said like, hey, you know, you're going to constantly be learning. There's constantly going to be challenges and things thrown at you. But it's how you respond to them, how you handle them that just kind of elevates you as you go.
Yeah. And I love the addressing, hey, we're going to have a tough conversation.
Yeah.
And then have the conversation, right? And it's a way easier way to deal with it rather than trying to lean or limp into it.
Or just kind of sugarcoat it, and then it's like, you know, clear. We have a saying at CLA, it's like clear is kind. So like, hey, I'm going to be tough on you, and this is what we're going to hash it out, and then we're just going to go back and we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah,
you know? And I think that yields a better result. How clear and how tough I am, you still have to kind of measure that, right, with the individual.
So accounting, finance, right? Accounting is a good, you know, go through the recession. I was in college during the recession. I just remember like accounting jobs were always like, hey, you're always going to have a job in accounting. A very hireable position, which it sounds like went through a little bit of your thought process and kind of how you majored, where you interned is like very, very hireable. And it's also seems like it's a very technical job, right? There's a knowledge base that you have to know. I'm sure there's a big spectrum of like what level, like when you're just doing a W-2's tax return versus doing a physician's office that has 50 locations. Like that's a very different level of knowledge and value add that you give. But you bring that technical skill set, but then there's these also other skills, right? You're mentioning stuff like leadership, delivery and communication of a message. So a lot of these things that you kind of, so in the tax field, not that it's rare, I know that people have that, but how was that when you learned to pair a very technical skill with now all those other skills? Did you draw some of that from athletics as far as your leadership style and the willingness to, you know, stack different skills and communicate? And I just feel like in the tax industry, like maybe that's a little bit of a rare. You're very, just meeting you, and I think we had met in person before. I feel like I know you so much better because we talked on the phone and I hear your story, but you immediately have an energy about you from a communication standpoint. You're very natural and warm with people. That has to help you a ton in a very technical industry to be able to pair that with, you know, people skills, leadership, and so on and so forth.
I think that comes down to having the confidence too, as one of my skills. So, you know, when you come in and you start, you're the youngest, you're the newest. So you have to have the confidence that I don't know everything, but I'm okay asking questions and I'm okay learning. I think having Blake, and we'll go back to him again, but he was a great mentor in that he was able to have the conversations he was more than just, I'm going to, you know, sit here and crunch numbers on a tax return. He engaged clients. He talked to clients in a way that made them feel comfortable when it was uncomfortable topics. You know, when you're talking about money and paying taxes, nobody wants to pay more than they should. But it's being able to communicate with people in a way that allows them to feel comfortable, allows them to understand, and then feel like, okay, I can trust this person with my money. I can trust that they're doing the right thing. I can trust them, you know, with this. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And also, you obviously have been very successful in what you do, but I want to go to like some of the challenges maybe since you stopped playing, because I think cutting your career short with an injury is very tough. I mean, that had to be very tough emotionally. It probably expedited what you had to do professionally, where you're like, okay, I thought I had another couple of years. I don't. Now I'm going to get after it in this new. Did you take some of that energy from being done early and put it into your career? Do you think that helped you? Or just bring me back to that time when, you know, it was cut short, the back injury had to be super frustrating, kind of like where you were as a college student during that time.
Yeah, I think it's the realization that it was like, this is it. Like, I'm done. But I think also knowing that I was making the decision for my future self. So you talk about like, hey, what would you tell your former self? But for my future self, to make sure I could have children and that I could be active with them and those types of things. I think that made the decision a little bit easier. Sure, it was tough, and sure there were days, you know, I supported the team through my junior year, was at all the games and things like that. So sure, that was difficult, but it's still a team sport, right? Yep. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So if I'm not there cheering them on, you know, I just feel like that's a huge responsibility as a leader and as a teammate, other challenges, I would say, just taking it back to sports, you lose a lot and you fail a lot in sports, right? So I think bringing that into the work environment, you're going to do a lot of things wrong. Something I learned very early on was own it when you do something wrong, admit to it, learn from it, and move on. It's just better to just say, I did the wrong thing, or I should have done this, or to the client, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, but here's how we're going to fix it. So I think having those experiences of failing, losing, having an early injury that's ended my career, I think all of those things just help, build that base in my professional career.
Yeah, that ownership of, it's something very simple, but it gets you a long way. If you can look at somebody and say, you know what, I was wrong. It's not anybody else's fault. It's mine. And somebody's like, wow, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Next question.
It just kind of takes all of the pressure off, and it's like, yep. Okay, now let's move on. Let's figure out how to fix it, and what can we do differently next time?
Did you feel during your internship that you were kind of back earning a spot on a team? Like, did you feel, did you naturally know that would parlay into a job, or that was strong likelihood?
It was a strong likelihood, just because the way the profession works, when the firm spends so much time training and bringing in an intern and showing them what to do, it's much easier to obviously keep a person, right? Retain a person than hire a new one. So for me, it was about the people. Whether you go work at a Big Four firm or you go work at just a local, mom and pop CPA firm, the work is the same.
Sure.
Disney's balance sheet's going to have a heck of a lot more zeros than, a different client's balance sheet. But how you go about dealing with the client, the service, and all of that is the same, whether it's large or small. So I think that was just a great way for me to kind of get going in my career. Yeah,
naturally. No, that's really cool. So bring us to now, somebody that's interested in tax, accounting, and so on and so forth. Like,
please
are you one of those? Yeah, like, so if your industry, and I would assume is like ours, I do insurance, it's an aging industry, right? You have a lot of people retiring. We've referenced that, and industry just craves young, quality, willing talent.
Right.
So what's your mindset and your approach on recruiting or attracting that talent or grooming that talent? Do you have, should people get into the tax business? Give us a little bit about kind of what you love about it. Yeah.
So accounting is kind of going through this attrition. So if you look at the stats at UCF, accounting majors are down 20%. As a whole, and then you've got the boomers retiring. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I'll call it. From what CLA in particular, because it's been a while since I've been in a small firm and I don't have other experiences, but we focus a lot on culture, being in the office, developing the team, spending time with the team outside of just, hey, here's these 10 tax returns you need to get done. It's all about building the relationships. So when we talk to younger students that are just trying to figure out what they want to do, it's like, okay, yes, this is a very tough career, but it's also a very rewarding career. And you really can make an impact on a client because it's all, we're the 8th largest firm in the country. We're the only top 10 firm that deals with privately held businesses and their owners.
Interesting.
So our clients have skin in the game. And for them, this is their bread and this is their livelihood. So it's much more impactful for me, I feel like, to say, okay, Dr. Smith, this is what I think we should do, and this is how you're going to help your cash flow, and let's talk about retirement and things like that. Yeah. So when you come into CLA or you come into a public accounting firm, I always tell students it's all about the people. So you got to figure out who you connect with. When I'm out recruiting, it's all about the people because you're going to spend a ton of time with them. You're going to be away from your family. Those are tough decisions that my husband and I make regularly about, who does what. But it's a very rewarding career.
Yeah. And it does seem the track you're on, I mean, again, just a fantastic track. But there's, a lot of years and effort to get to the point that you've been in. And right. And you probably make that trade-off, like you said, every day, every week, every month. But kind of what I hear is it is worth it. And I think about the businesses you deal with and the level that you deal with too. To be able to see the business owner across the table and know that, they do have stake in the game has to be super rewarding because you probably get the calls of, the oh crap calls or, stuff where you're really working through some complex issues that's going to affect their livelihood or their family's livelihood. And that's cool that you're connected. I didn't know the distinction that you guys were the only top 10 firm that deals with actual people. you know, business owners.
Not the shareholders of
Right.
Disney. Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's been our niche all along since Larson Allen started in the 50s, and we had a merger with Clifton Gunderson. So that's always been our focus, and I don't see that changing.
So go back to the person, and for you, like, I don't know, it's almost like I envy how simple it was for you, seeming like you're just like, hey, I'm driven. I like accounting. I'm going to get a job and I'm going to crush it. And I'm going to be successful and I'm going to become a principal. And, you know, you should do this. You know, it's like, but was there ever a confusion, or what would you say to somebody who's, you know, figuring out what they want to do? They're playing a sport. They know it's going to end. You know, like me, right? I like get to my senior year and I have a conversation with my dad. He's like, hey, by the way, you know, you need to get a job, right? And I'm like, I knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Like, I knew this was coming. And they know it's coming, but they don't know what they want to do. What would be some tips you would give somebody that was making that transition to where would they start to figure out, you know, who should they talk to? What should their mindset be to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life?
I think it's talking to people that they admire or that they see in similar positions. So one of my other mentors at CLA, Lori Sims, she retired. You know, she was a working mom. She had 2 kids. So she had to deal with that. And in an environment that's obviously a lot different than ours is now, like I can work late at night if I need to after my girls go to bed. But just to have people that have done what you are looking to do, and for them to tell you, hey, it's okay, or, you know, these are the things I would have done different. So you learn from other people's experiences. So if you're coming out of school and you're like, I think I like this accounting thing, or I think I like whatever it is, talk to people in the industry, ask, and have real conversations. Like, to me, being transparent about what you like and what you don't like, it's not rosy every day at CLA. We all know that's, you know, the case, but I think having those types of conversations where it's like, this is what I do, this is what I like about my job, this is what I'm working to change, and just understanding that it's not, you're going to have to work. Like, it's not going to just be given to you.
Right.
You know, so the harder that you work, the more good things will continue to come to you.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that hard work and that dedication and the discipline will pay off. It may not seem like it every day, but I think you've got to look at those baby steps that get you to kind of your ultimate goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like being aware, if you're having conversations with other people that have been successful, like understand there's pros and cons to each role, each industry, each track, and make those decisions consciously. It's kind of like when you were reference with your husband, you're talking about these things that are realities, but you're collectively making them consciously rather than maybe just unconsciously ending up somewhere where you're like, how did I get here?
Right.
You know,
right.
How am I spending this much time away from my family, or doing this thing, or I'm not making enough money yet, where you know the track, you're aware of it, and you lean hard into it to say, hey, I'm aware of all these things, but I really like the upside here, and I'm okay with some of these downsides, and I'm willing to pay that price. And
I need a village. You know, I mean, my husband and my parents, they've been supportive of me this entire time, so there's got to be a give and take, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Dave and I can't go hard at the same time all the time and not have the girls. And I'm an example for my kids too, right? Like 2 girls, they look up to me, you know, I want them to feel like they can be empowered. They can do whatever they want to do in their lives as they grow up. And mom has done these really cool things, and maybe I want to do that, or maybe I don't want to do that, but at least they've got someone that they can look to and say, okay, you know, this is pretty cool.
I just got goosebumps, specifically because your kids are the ages you said
11 and 8.
11 and 8, right? So they're really starting to get it.
They're
right?
really
they're starting to see it.
They listen.
Yep, and they're starting to see, you know, you make sacrifices, but you know, I remember my mom was one of the, you know, founders. She was the founder of Florida Virtual Schools, now become.
Oh, that's cool.
And I remember back in the late 90s, and she was the CEO there for 18 years, and she always had a big responsibility, big role, and it was so different than some of the friends that maybe I went to high school with or went to college with my mom versus what maybe some of their moms did, and everyone makes that choice within their household. But for us, we always grew up and mom was always busy, like, right. and she made games and all that stuff, but she had a big job and she traveled and I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now, and as a parent and seeing my kids and just wondering that when they get to the age of your kids, just knowing that they're watching, right?
Right.
And that was such an inspiration to me, but at the time I didn't realize it. So I'm just curious to you that's clearly something that consciously drives a little bit of your work ethic.
And I also feel like, you know, going again, props to my husband, but like When I work late, I pick 2 days a week during busy season to work late, and I work really late in the office because I feel like if I'm going to not see my kids, I'm going to maximize that time. Yeah. So my husband has, Xbox game night on Thursday nights, and they're like, "Mom,
what play? What games you play?"
Sonic Racing. They have Lego World. They have like a Battlefield game they play. But they're like, "Mom, when are you starting to work late again?" So like, it's not even a big deal for them. Because then they have great time, one-on-one time with Dad. So he's made it not a big deal that I'm making these sacrifices or I'm choosing to do this for my career. They don't know any different.
When did you start doing that? Because that's a great idea, right?
Once I started having them, and probably when I had Quinn, my youngest, it's like, okay, I only have so many hours. I know this is busy season and I have to put in the time. So how do I maximize my time? On Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I leave at 5 o'clock. I get them. We do, family time and all that. How do I maximize my time? And so we've kind of modified it over the years on what days I work late. Our firm is awesome, and they offer dinner on Tuesday and Thursday nights. So that makes it easier to stay late. And it's just we calendar it all out. But they're like, "Hey, Mom, when are you working late again?"
Yeah. No, that's so
cool.
So
it makes me feel better too, because then it's not like I'm like guilty.
You're not calling at 7 and going, "Hey, I'm not going to be home tonight."
Right.
And that is really cool.
Yeah.
Because that can weigh on a person big time, is 100%. To be like, your feet aren't where they are. You're thinking about while you're working, and you need to be working, you're thinking about, I gotta be home. I'm missing, right? To be able to, again, consciously get that framework settled allows you to be where you are, be really, really good. You're home as a mom, be the best mom you can be, and kind of make that work.
Yep.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you too, we hear a lot of stuff. Like I remember in school, you would have, I don't know, it was SAC. Was it SAC? There was all these committees, like student athlete committees.
Oh, yeah.
And then they would do career fairs and stuff like that. And there was always like this narrative of like, hey, like, employers value athletics and employers value athletes and so on and so forth. And I there's so many cliches around it, but I'm just curious, you now going through athletics, but also being an employer and looking to hire, recruit, and you're leading a team and everything else. What do you think it is about if you looked at a college athlete and you were looking to interview them, hire them? What are the kind of the skill sets that you look for? What are the real reasons that somebody like that has that experience can actually use that experience as a leverage point for what's next, or not? Because I think playing a sport by itself doesn't lend that you're going to have success.
Correct.
In your career.
Correct.
I think there's something about making that transition and borrowing from the experience and leveraging it. I'm just curious to hear what you kind of think about that.
Yeah, I think being a part of a team, so like you're accountable, right? You're accountable. You have to be disciplined. You have to show up every day to practice. If you want to play, right? Like you can't just miss practice and assume you're going to play the next game. It doesn't work like that. You want to show up and you want to get advanced in your career. You want to grow and develop. You got to be dedicated. You got to be disciplined, and you got to be motivated. So, yes, you can do the bare minimum, and yes, that's fine if that's all you want to do. But if you want to exceed, and grow and advance, then you're going to have to do those things. And I think just being a part of a team, being, especially at the collegiate level, all those things you have to manage all of that. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but to me, just knowing that it's not all going to go well, that you're going to have setbacks, that you're not going to understand a concept right away, that fear of failure or fear of losing, I think that translates well when you're going into a field like accounting, because there are a lot of things that you have to learn. What you learn in school is not practically how it always works. Right. In some, industries or some things like that, it is. But in accounting, you go take an audit class in school and it's nothing like auditing cash or accounts receivable or anything like that. So, so I think it's understanding that, hey, you've got this degree, but you're about to go start and you don't really know.
You're a baby. You don't know anything. Yeah.
Which I think I kind of translate that back to, you go through middle school, you're playing all these sports, you make the varsity team, you're excited. And then then you're the freshman in high school and then you got to do it again. And then you kind of and the pool gets smaller, right? But you still have to kind of prove yourself at each level. So when you get into your career, you have to prove that, I deserve it and that there's not someone coming behind me that would outplay me or outwork me or whatever. Like, I'm not going to get outworked.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fantastic. I love that. And I love the I'm not going to get outworked mentality too. It's like, but the level of that I didn't kind of pair that between you're always kind of leveling up as an athlete if you want to play. That was the one thing that you just said that stuck out, because you ever heard of like the illusion of choice? There was a podcast, I think it was a book I was listening to. It was talking about like, if you want to be successful or if you want to play, if you say you want these things, there are only so many choices, right? You're going to have to work really hard. You're going to have to show up when you don't want to. But if you don't want to play, you don't have to do all those things.
Right.
But don't think, if you want to play, don't think you have like this menu of all these options that you can kind of do whatever you want.
Right. Whenever you want.
Or you're not going to have a high level of accountability. So I think that's a really good starting point for people to say, what do you want? Do you truly want to be successful? Do you, whatever's next for you, are you willing to pay the price and go after it is kind of what I heard from that too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe there's a clarity too for people. And because I always think like people have like, I have this visual of like people have this gas tank of like, and they're constantly making the decision whether they should use the gas and whether it's worth it or they should save it, and I think defining, it sounds like you at a very young age were like, this is it. And I'm putting everything I have into this accounting thing. And it's served you really well because you've kind of continued to hit that levels and you're willing to pay the price to get there. So I think people struggle to find that though.
But again, I think the backside of that is having that net, having that support system. So I'm going to go after this, and I'm going to go try for these things. And I've got people behind there to support me. So if I do fail, it's like, hey, Emily, you know what? You tried. This didn't go well, but that's okay. Let's get back at it again tomorrow. Let's approach it a different way. Or, let's try a different industry or try a different service line within, there's so many different options within CLA in particular of what you can do with your career. It's not just, audit and tax. So, intern, you may come in and you may think, oh, I want tax. And we used to talk about this with the firm I started with, the small local firm. We had a principal that came in and he was like, I'm going to be audit. I'm going to be audit. I'm going to be audit. Came in and he hated it. And he was literally like, he could recite code sections. Like he was amazing in the tax world. So I just think having that flexibility and that mobility, which again, you learn in athletics, you have to constantly be shifting when you're on defense, offense, whatever, to have that mobility to say, okay, well, I thought I wanted to do this. Turns out I really don't like that. So let's try this. Yeah. And kind of, I think it's also knowing when you need to change directions too.
That's
like
that's a good point.
This isn't working for me, so let's try something different.
Yeah, it's kind of like that universal advice of like never quit, and you're like, well, I mean, maybe you're in the wrong thing though. Like there is something to that.
There is something of knowing.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a, hey, I've given this a good honest try, but maybe I pivot because, the audit side is I hate it, but I'm really good at this, and that's equally as valuable or more valuable. So
correct.
So let's end with a little bit of an encouraging note for that person. Maybe they're in that phase, right? Maybe they're in school, they're transitioning into the professional world, or they've gotten out and they've gotten into a career, but maybe it's not it for them. What would you say to somebody that's kind of looking to find what they're doing next and, kind of what you've borrowed from your career and the success that you've had where you would, encourage them to find that path for them?
I would say be confident in knowing, like, okay, if you make this decision and it's, you've decided you want to do something different, then be confident that I'm going to go find the next thing and I'm going to put my heart and soul into that. And then when you do get there, don't also be afraid to kind of enjoy your success along the way. I think a lot of athletes, it's like go, go, go. And you get to certain points and you're like, I made it. But then you're like, I want the next thing, or I want the next thing. So enjoy the moment when you get there and then go back and put your head down and do the work. I think for those that are looking to switch or trying to figure out, where they want to go in life, don't be afraid to also ask for help. Going back to the mentors, the other people that are in your industry, or maybe people that are outside the industry that don't have a clue how accounting works, but they may give you great advice in a whole different way. So I think, again, I keep going back to relationships and just talking to people, meeting people. The more network that you can build early on in your career, you don't know when it's going to come back and work in your favor or help you in another way. Yeah. So I guess that's how I would lend it.
I love that. And I love how it circles back. And I'm a huge proponent. I think that would be the number one thing I'd say too, as far as relationships. And I think some people have maybe bigger networks than others, but I think there's a lot of people that would be willing to help if you approach 100%. Them in the right way. Like even if you come from nothing and know nobody and you're in a city that you don't know, if you went to somebody and you said, hey, who are the, hey coach, who are the 5 most successful people that are in the boosters? Right. And you went and talked to them and said, hey, Ron, Emily, whatever.
Right.
I heard you were extremely successful. I'm looking to figure out what I want to do. Could I buy you a cup of coffee anytime? Yeah. And they'd be like, yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
So I think if you can figure out who in your network that you respect, that you look at their life and you go, hey, you know what, I'd want a little bit of that. Or figure out people within your network that may just know people that you don't know and go pursue those relationships. I think that can get you a really long way. So I think that's a really good word.
Agreed, 100%.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I know how busy you are, so I was like, we're starting on time, we're ending on time, and I'm just super, super grateful, and I think the listeners will feel the same way about the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.